Okay, so yeah, in this chapter we're going to just look at doing the handle and then also the rope. So one thing I forgot to add was in this shading tab, viewport shading, you click on this drop down and you click on cavity, and it actually makes it easier to look at the stone's cavities and what you can adjust and stuff like that, which is super useful, especially when you're doing rocks. Alright, so what I'm going to do with this is just going to go and move this up. What I want to do also is set origin to 3D cursor. So, and we'll keep it like that. So what I want to do next is just create this shape for the wood. So you just click on add, mesh. And I'm actually just going to go with cube, to be honest, and click on edit mode, scale this down, scale this on the Z axis up, scale it a bit wider, move this up, and we kind of have the beginning of the shape that we want. So what I want to do is I want to add a loop cut up the middle, use the scale tool, scale it out, add another loop cut down the other side, use a scale tool, scale it out, and then I want to add one more loop cut, use the move tool, move it down, and I can select the bottom edge, select edge loops, and that should select all the edges. If not, you just hold shift and select around the bottom edges, and you kind of want to get that widening at the bottom, so you just use a scale tool and just scale it to be wider. Okay, the last thing that you want to do is use the face, hold shift, select the faces at the bottom, press E to extrude it down, and then scale it in like that to get that shape. Okay, for this top bit, what I want to do is actually adjust the model, the stone. So I'm going to go from edit mode to object mode. I'm going to actually adjust the stone and just use the move tool and make it a bit flatter around this part, and maybe even change the radius and make the stone shape a bit to the stick. Okay, so I'm just using the move tool and just bringing everything up and down and just seeing what I want the final look to look like. Get out of sculpt mode, click on the stick, go into edit mode, press A, S, Shift and Z at the same time to scale it, not using the Z axis. Okay, so let's go to object mode, edit mode, and just bring this across. Alright, so we kind of have the basic shape that we want. Maybe this bottom part could start a little sooner, so you select one edge going across, select edge loops, bring this down. You've got a thicker bottom, so now if I wanted to, I can just go add one more edge loop, bring this up, go to object mode, add modifier, subdivision surface, So what we're getting here is it's subdividing it, but it's actually not deforming the way we want it to deform. We want it to keep some of these sharp edges, but we need it to be high poly so we can sculpt it later. So I would fix some of these edges by just adding more edge loops closer to keep it sharp. So now this way I'm going to do it now isn't going to work. So if I add an edge loop here and then I move it up, it actually just keeps the same width. So to fix that, you can do Shift and V, and that slides the edge loop up to where you want it to be. And then you can add another edge loop, and you can do Shift and V and slide that one down to the other part of the mesh. Now if you're not careful and you don't look what you're doing, you can go wrong. So I'll do it again. So you add a loop cut, Shift and V, and then go up, and add another loop cut, Shift and V, and go down, and another one, Shift V, it goes up. Sometimes it has a weird mind of its own. Where it's like deforming in weird ways. So to avoid this, you can actually just select one edge, click on, let's just 1 second. Let's just look at what we've done so far, to be honest. Alright, those edges look fine. So let's just do select edge loop and just bevel the edges. There you go. You get the same outcome really. And then the bottom part, again, you can just do your edge loop, Shift and V, and click. But again, some parts just, the slide is not always perfect. So what I would do, instead of using this loop cut, I would press one edge, press Control and R. Once you click once, you can slide it down. Click again. I think you can actually do that with loop cut, to be honest. No, you actually can't. Yeah. So Control R, slide it down, and it settles in nicely. So there you go. You got mainly the main shapes that you need to start sculpting. So if I wanted to, I can just go up from there, and it would hold those forms. So that's the point of good topology, is that it helps hold forms on the subdivision. So I'm going to call this one low poly handle, and then I'm going to duplicate, and then I'm going to do one that's called high poly handle. Okay, and I'm going to hide this low poly one, and then I'm going to go in into this high poly handle, and I'm just going to apply, and now I'm just going to start sculpting. So let's go to sculpt mode, and let's go to, let's change the radius of this brush. So what I want is actually these sort of wooden chipped effects. So what I'm actually going to do is, this is mostly going to be texture. This isn't going to be like the other way I did it, because we're trying to hold the form. We're not really actually doing too much to change the form. We just want an actual texture on there. So what I would do is I'll just use clay strips, or was it layers? Yeah, let's just use layers. And let's go and get a wood texture. You can even do like something more specific, like splintered wood texture. And you kind of want something like this, but in maybe black and white. If I can't find it, I'll just go back to the other one that I just had. So you just want a splintered wood texture, sort of to get a texture like this image there. So let's try and find something. Alright, I've given up. Let's go back to this one. This isn't too bad. This is kind of like the texture that we're looking for. But remember, we're just using this. We're just using this to. Oops. Alright, so let's see if there's any more. That one's not working. There you go, splintered wood texture. Let's go back to Blender. Gonna open this up from my downloads, search for it. Splintered wood texture. Go to sculpt mode. Just open that one. Okay, so it's loaded now. Alright, cool. So let's see. So what I want to do is actually remesh this to 0.009. And now when you put the texture on there, you get that, the effect, kind of the effect that you want. So here's how you actually play with the texture to get it to do what you want it to do. So the first thing I want to do is change the mapping. I don't want it to be view plane, I want it to be stencil. So stencil basically means if I right click on it, it shows this image. If I right click on it, I can actually like move it into position, hold control and right click and drag, and I can drag it up to get that sort of positioning that I want. And then when I click and drag, it's actually going to draw on those splinters, that splintered effect onto the mesh, which is really cool. I can also change the strength down and get that splintering effect again. So that's a little closer to what we want. So I'm going to just, in pure ref, just zoom into how we want it to look. So we kind of want it to just have these lines at the bottom. Okay, so again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're not going really for perfection here. We're just trying to get that effect we can clean it up, or we can like smooth it out later. You can just use different parts of the image to actually continually create that splintering effect. There you go. Okay, so we've got something which is good. It's better than nothing. For the rest of the way, we can just use this texture. And it's already a load of detail that we would otherwise have had to sculpt in, which would have taken ages. So this is a quick way of doing that. Okay, and now we've got a bit more of a style that we want. We can smooth it down, and I'm just holding shift and clicking at different spots. Kind of takes away from that extreme detail that we had, but I don't really want too much detail. And if you want, you can just go back to view plane mode, and then you can also just switch out. So that saved us a lot of time, but you can also go and use the scrape tool very lightly and see if you can bring back or give it a bit more of a stylized feel, like everything was kind of sculpting a little bit. So it still keeps that texture detail in there, and then you also get to keep that sculpted look to it as well. And if you wanted, you can go back over some of these details and add your own little sculpting touch to it, like using the clay strips tool, changing the strength, bringing it down, and changing the radius, and just like bringing out some of those forms that are already in there. So that process is like what we would call using alphas in sculpting, and then there's in loads of sci-fi models, especially for paneling. You'd use a method similar to this, where you would just like use an alpha image or texture image that you find, and use it to create like really nice details on a surface that looks like it's actually, like, you know, been modeled in, which it hasn't. It's just an effect that you chose to use. Okay, and then you can even go back in with this the sharp brush, and just, and I'm doing it all with a mouse, so it's not really like super challenging, to be fair. Okay, and then you can just go in and redefine some of those shapes. Imagine having to do all of this from scratch, from your own imagination. All right, could take forever. You might lose your place, or it just might get so frustrating. But this is a cool way of being able to experiment yourself, create your own sort of method, and then also have a bit of fun sculpting, but not, you know, every line that you make is the be all and end all to the sculpt. This is a good way of working with existing patterns. Okay, and you get some really good results. And you've already added a lot of the surface textures that you would have done like you did in the rock sculpting part. So that was this part of the tutorial. Pretty much done now. It was super quick. Yeah, so that's how I would do the stick. Also might give it a bit of a bend, or like using the grab tool and just make some parts narrower, make it bend a bit. And you go, so you've got sort of the stick part done now very quickly. Okay, and now let's just go back into object.